Hi, this is Junk Journals 101. Today we're going to cover our book or make our hardbound book. There's going to be a couple of steps and I'm going to go over a couple of ways. So if you're using a hardbound book that's already put together, you're going to be able to skip a step in here and decide how you want to cover your cover, basically. So, but if you want to build from scratch, then you need to put the book cover base together first, and then we'll go into some other things. So let me go ahead and get started real quick, and then we'll get on into it, and hopefully it'll make sense to you. So let me get my toolkit out of the way. Okay. Okay, so when you're building your book from base, what I usually like to do is I cut my my board. Let me make sure I'm on camera here. Which way I have to go. I cut my book board. So this is the board that I get from my comic book store. It is kind of a thin based chipboard, and therefore I wanted it to be a very sturdy book. So I wanted it to be very thick where I can barely move it. So what I do is I take and I cut 3 of these and glue them together for my front cover, my spine, and my back cover. Okay. I let that dry completely, and then the glue that I used was, what did I use? I used Yes Paste for that to glue it together, and just smeared it on with a old credit card, and then just fused them all 3 together. So, and then what I do while I'm doing that, because I have some that's cut off, I take 6 pieces of that and I make what I call a shim. And this is 6 boards thick. That's what I have written on here. Shim. Okay, and a shim helps you get the distance between your spine and your covers. Equal distance in there. And I usually do 6. At least 6, at least double what your cover is. So, or your board thickness is, at least double, if not more. So this is about 1/4 of an inch, this here. So, and I'll show you that as I use it, that'll make more sense to you. It's not something that you have to do, but you can, some people draw lines, like they measure or put this on here, draw lines, and then, you know, eyeball this. That's fine. You don't have to be perfect with it, but the fact of it is that if you don't get this straight, your book cover could be crooked. So it could actually lay crooked. So that's the reason why I try to do it a little bit straighter. Then I'm going to move my cutting board over because I've got to have this side first. I always work from the left side over. It's just the way that I do it, but you can work from whichever way you prefer. What I usually do also, this is a brown paper sack. You can use brown paper sack, you can use a large piece of paper, you can use 2 pieces of cardstock glued together, you can use the brown wrapping paper that you get for packaging. You could use newsprint even to wrap a couple layers or 3 layers of newsprint. You would have to wrap it. This is because it's paper bag, it's a little thicker, so I usually don't wrap it twice, but you could wrap it, you know, 3 times with newsprint. That would work. As you glue newsprint, though, keep in mind that the ink does run, so it could get a little messy, but it does work. It would make for an interesting book if you put the newsprint on there and then did a little bit of, you know, whitewash paint over it or something like that. It actually might look really cool. I know newsprint, a lot of times I make paper beads, and so the newsprint, a lot of times I have better outcome paper beads with news, just plain old newspaper, than I do trying to actually figure out, you know, let's stamp this, and you know, so you never know. Try what you have on hand first. Now what I do is I lay my cover piece, or my bookboard pieces, on my piece of paper bag. What I'm trying to achieve is about 1 to 1.5 inches on each side. And then I cut out that piece from the paper bag to work with, because I don't want the whole paper bag sitting here and have to work with that the whole time. So that's how I determine that. If I just lay in that, I don't measure too much. Then what I do is I draw a line at the bottom. Now this line down at the bottom, as long as you have that 1, 1.5 inches, 2 inches at the top, it doesn't have to be completely straight. You're not looking for, you know, everything has to be lined up completely straight or anything like that. But what does have to be straight is each one of these have to be the same along the bottom as you do it. So that's why I like having the line there for the first one, because then I'm not doing this with it. Even just that can get you to the point that you don't have anything left up here. So you want to make sure that you're semi-straight going there. So, and then I usually give me a line over here. I'll put this down, hang on to it, draw a line over here, because this tells me where I'm going to start. Because if I start like this, then I'm going to run out of space over here as I get over here. So there is certain things you have to pay attention to when you're doing it. You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to pay attention to spacing, because you have to make sure you have enough paper to wrap around, or all you're going to do is start over again. Okay, so and as you can see here at the bottom too, I know I have a glare, I'm sorry, it's not cut straight, and that's fine. There's not a problem with that. It doesn't have to be cut straight. I even have the little dip up here from the paper bag. See the little cutout for the paper bag? And that's fine. You can leave that in there too. So, like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so then what I want to do is go ahead and glue this down. Now, this is the first step for this. If I was using this book here that's already done, this is already pre-wrapped for me. This is all put together. I have a spine, I have 2 covers, a front and a back, that are all put together into a book form. So that means that I don't have to do this step. I don't have to use paper bag for this step. Now, you can use a paper bag to wrap around this and cover your book with this. But what I would do is I would skip this first initial step of putting the book bones together, and I would go on to what I want to do with the cover of my book, basically. Okay, so we'll get into that in a minute. But I wanted to let you know, if you're using this book, this step right here that I'm showing you with putting all this on here, you can skip this step. Now, that being said, I don't want to confuse you too much, but the same process that I'm using to wrap this cover here, you can use for this. So I would still lay it out, I would draw around it, cut out my paper bag to be able to wrap around it. I hope that makes sense. But what I'm trying to achieve with this here with this book here is what I have here. A book that's put together front and back. That's my point that I'm trying to achieve at this point. And then whatever you do to the covers from that is the same if you're using this book or you're using one that you have built yourself. Okay? Okay. Now, let me go ahead and get on with putting glue. And I'm going to use Yes Paste again. It's just it's my go-to glue. It's what I like using. So if you like using the Art Glitter Glue, use Art Glitter Glue. If you like tacky glue, use tacky glue. If you like Fabri-Tac, use Fabri-Tac. It's whatever you prefer. Aleene's tacky glue. Somebody asked me a question about PVA. PVA is great. That's a great glue. And to be fair, PVA stands for polyvinyl acetate, which is the base glue. Tacky glue is a polyvinyl acetate. Elmer's glue is a polyvinyl acetate. So it just has different water contents to it and a little bit different, maybe a little different formulations. But it's basically kind of all a polyvinyl acetate glue. So there is one on the market called PVA, and PVA is the original bookbinder's glue. So if that helps with it. Oh, okay. So what I'm doing is I'm lining this up with the line I have over here on the side, and I'm kind of keeping up with the line at the bottom. So as you can see, it's not a perfect measure, but that's what I want when I glue this down. It doesn't have to be a perfect measure on it. Get a paper towel. I'm gonna have glue on there, but I don't want chunks of glue on the side because that'll help. It'll bulge out. Okay. And then I burnish it real good. You can even take your bone folder and burnish it real good. Make sure all your corners and your edges are stuck down. I can already tell. Sorry about that. But I have this side that isn't sticking, so we have to put more glue down. I like all my corners to be stuck. I don't like any of my corners to be not stuck. So I do it until they are stuck. I paint a lot of my covers, so if I find in painting, and so if you're going to do any painting, this is a really good thing to do. You have to make sure you use glue everywhere. So say you take double-sided tape and you put a strip on your book cover and you just cover like 3 strips. And then you go back and you paint your book. Well, where those 3 strips are stuck, the paper is going to stick down. Anywhere it's not, it's going to soak up that water and it's going to wrinkle off of your cover. So that's why I make sure that I have glue everywhere on the book. That goes for any book. Any type of book that you're doing, that you have, that you're gluing, if you're going to paint it, any kind of painting, any kind of water technique, anything like that, you're going to want to make sure that you've got glue everywhere on it. That it's not going to peel up on you. Okay. I'm just putting glue on that top corner. And again, turning it over. And I'm going to burnish this corner here. Okay. Okay, now then, here comes the fun part. Okay, what I usually do is I put a ruler down here at the bottom. What this does is it gives me something that I can brace up against to get this line completely straight. And then I also use my shim in here as I'm placing down the others. So let me put glue on my spine and get it glued. Okay. Then I tip it to make sure I can see, make sure there's glue everywhere I need to have glue on it. Sometimes it gets a little dry on me, so I'll put a little bit more on there. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to line this up so I know that that's even on the bottom. And then I'm going to take my shim in here. I'm going to place my hand here like an L shape, and I'm going to push this over. Okay. So we've got this lined up here, and we've got, now once that gets in there, then you can just take it off. And I go up and down to make sure that, see, it's completely done. Now this will get glue on it, but it will dry. You won't have to worry about that. It's just a shim. So and I am a messy gluer. I usually end up with glue everywhere. So and then I turn it over, and I'm going to burnish this too. I like to burnish this while this is still kind of wet, because it will pull the paper over just a little bit, and it'll fit in. Okay, so you start seeing it lining up there, taking shape. Okay. Now I do the next one the same way. Glue. And I know this is kind of boring to watch me put glue on here, but I don't know how else to do it but just to do it on camera for you. If you want to fast forward a little bit, you can. Just make sure you have glue all over. And the other thing is that I always put glue on my cover. When I'm wrapping my cover, I never put glue on the wrap that I'm putting around my cover until I get to the sides that are going to wrap around the outside and over into the middle of the book. It's just easier to put glue on your cover than it is trying to figure out where to put it on the... You use a lot less glue, and you have a sturdy surface to actually put the glue onto. So I have used before where I put around the edges the double-sided tape and then put the glue in the middle, and that seems to work really well too. Okay, so same process here. Put your ruler down, have your shim ready to go. Okay, I'm going to stick this here, and I just lay it down lightly. And I hang on to both. I make the L shape with my hand to hold on to both, and then I press it in. Make sure you're up against the shim, and then you press it in. Okay. Okay. Okay, this comes up. Now the shim you won't need anymore. Once you get this on here, like this, you won't need this anymore. And if you're doing a book like this, keep in mind you won't need a shim at all. This has already been done for you. Okay, this whole step has already been done if you're using a pre-made cover. Okay. Turn it over. And again, we're going to burnish. Burnish, burnish, burnish. I always go around the outside of my book. It makes it easier when you start folding that to get that to actually fold around your book. Like this. And I go from the outside down because you want it to wrap around your book. Okay. Okay. There we go. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is you want to make sure you have enough here on the corner, on each of your corners, sorry, to wrap around the end of your book, right? Okay, so how you do that, and I usually take, you can take your shim and put it here. You can take a ruler and put it there. I just use my shim because my shim is twice the size of my book. So I'm going to make sure that I have enough to wrap around, and I just make a line. Sometimes it writes and sometimes it doesn't. Okay, so on each of the corners, I just hold it there and I draw a line next to it. Put it right up to the corner like that. Draw your line. Right up to your corner. And draw your line. Okay, some people just cut. They eyeball it and cut. I would recommend measuring it the first time you do it because it is deceptive sometimes. Okay, so at this point what you're going to do is you're going to cut on that line. and cut off each one of your corners. Okay? And I don't curve out. Like some people will cut like into the corner and then curve it out. I don't do that either. I just cut it out. Cut a straight off corner piece. Okay, so now what you're going to do is you're going to start moving your paper around your board. Okay? And I usually just use my hand. Sometimes I'll take my bone folder and just press over with it. But you just want to form it around your cover. Okay. Try not to form that too much right now because that can move. It can change on you. So I'm going to fold this in. You don't need quite this much to wrap over, but it doesn't matter. You can have a little bit less. You can have a little bit more. So I always like to have more than not enough. So hopefully that makes sense. Now I always fold my bottom and my top in first, and then my sides. That's just the way I've always done it. You can do it another way if you want, but I just find that it works a little easier that way, and it looks more professional when you're done, I think. But okay, so and I glue as I go. I don't put glue on everything, and then unless it's double-sided tape. If it's double-sided tape, then I put tape down on everything. But if it's actual wet glue or paste, I glue as I go. If you try to put it down and then put all that, you know, stick it all down and then, or put all your glue down and then go back and try to fold all your papers in before it dries, it doesn't, with paste anyway, it doesn't stay wet that long. With some glues it will. Again, it depends on the water content of the glue. But, okay, just wet that up, your glue, and stick it down. And I run my finger in here so you can see how, well, try not to have glue on your finger. That was fun. And then I push it up and push this out, just like that. And you can pull some of your glue out if you need to from underneath. Try to get in there when it's a little wet. Not too wet, because you can go through the paper very easily. I push this in and let the excess of the paper be taken up in the fold. So if you push in this way, if you're not trying to get the glue to move another way or move up to the edge, if you pull into your spine here, you'll have enough give for your covers. Okay, how that works. Yay! Okay, so then we're going to turn it around and we're going to glue this side. I'm just making a mess with my glue, jeez. Okay, it's 30 minutes so far. Okay, I can get that off later. Okay, just keep pulling on it. Good, get your glue. Okay. Sorry, the camera is connected to my table, so. Okay, there we go. That was good. Now I have a little spot. Yeah, yeah. I didn't get that quite good enough. So just go back in and put a little bit of glue in there. Glue. Okay. Here we go. Okay, now then, on these little, you have some little things that are hung over, right? That's so that these get covered in here, right? Okay. So I gotta go back in here and put a little bit of glue. Glue that down. Okay. So now you want to take your bone folder or your scissors or just your finger. But what I do is I take my bone folder, here's my point, right? And I go right to the corner and I push in right here just to cover that down and cover that around that corner, and I flatten it. Okay? Really burnish that. I do that on both sides before I put glue down. And the reason why I do that is so that, one, that my corner is covered, but two, as I'm putting glue down, I want to make sure that I get glue over this little flap that's folded down here. Because it's not going to be on the underneath side, it's going to be on the top side, that's going to wrap around. And see how that folds over and just is a perfect neat little fold right there? Because you can't see it, and that's what you want. You don't want to be able to see it. You don't want it noticeable. You don't want it to be to where it stands out. You want it flat. Okay. This little technique I learned a long time ago. I shouldn't say that long ago. It hasn't been that long ago. But there was a show on TV on one of the channels called Club Scrap. And her name was Trisha, I believe. Trish. Michael Stronghold was one of the guests on it. It was kind of a show, kind of like if anybody ever watched Carol Duvall, it was kind of like a show like that. They did different craft projects. They showed different supplies, how to use it. Judy from Judykins was on there and whatnot. They did different craft things. And one of the things that she did was she showed how to make your own book. It was a very, very cool show. I think they still have some of the shows on YouTube. It was a very, very cool show. Club Scrap. So, and ever since I watched that show and learned how to make books like that, like this, I have never made them any different. This is how I make my books. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm just, because when you press on a book and like burnish it like this, sometimes that has a tendency to want to curl up just a little bit, the way you're burnishing it. So if you just move it just a little bit, flatten it out just a little bit, not enough to damage your cover, or anything. Not enough to damage anything on the front, but just move it. Okay, so there it is. There's the one side all wrapped and ready to go. And you can see that little fold there, how it just lays right into that side. Okay? So I go into the next one. Now, if you have a big enough gap here, see like this, you need to put glue under there, because that will gap. And you don't want gaps like that. At least I don't. If it works for you and you haven't found any problems with it, just, you know, you can go with it. But I find that, especially when you're painting, anything, if it's wet, it just wants to lift. And if the thing that's on the bottom isn't glued down, then the thing on the top glued to it isn't glued down. So, okay, so point of your thing, press this down, and you have to kind of work it in there sometimes. Okay, and then just press it in there, and sometimes it looks really messy, but when you wrap it, it just kind of goes in there. So I don't know, I've never had any problems with it. One of them I mean, it was really bad. I had worked with it for a while to get it to go in there and thought, this is never going to look right. And can't ever tell. It just lays right in there, and you can't tell that I had all that problem with it. So it works. Okay. I forgot to take care of that little lip. I have a little lip on the edge of this paper that I forgot to cut off. I was going to cut it off, but I'll just glue it down. It's fine. It's not going to be shown. It's not going to be seen. The end. So, okay. Okay, just fold it up around. Burnish it. Now, if you find when it dries, if you find that you have to go in here and put a little bit more glue, that's fine. I would wait though and just see what you have to do for a little bit. You can take your fine line glue at that point and stick the little nozzle in there and glue it down if it didn't stick. But for the most part, the paste really does stick. So, okay, so that is your cover. You have now made a book, right? Your book is together. Look at that. And it sets up. You might find too, yeah, see? Now that'll change as you go. Like with it opening on its own, the more it's opened and closed, or the more it sits, kind of like this, it'll stay closed. So don't worry about that. That's fine. If you find that you need to burnish this a little bit more, you can run in here. Just let the bone folder do its job. Don't try to force it in there. Just give a little bit of pressure and just keep moving it back and forth. It takes a little elbow grease, but in the end you'll have a better product with it. So if you try not to force it, and then see, there we go. Okay. Yay. A book. Okay. Now then, both of these books then are at the same point. Now you can see here that this one has a cover already on the inside. We're going to take care of that with this one. Now if you want to go back in and take some of this brown paper sack and do a cover over the inside of this one, you can do that as well, but it's not necessary because we're going to take another sheet and it's going to cover this whole inside. So I'm not all that worried about that. At this point, what we're ready to do now is decide what we want to do for our covers, right? So we've got our covers. Whether you're using one that you built yourself or one that's already been built for you and you're just doing this. If you want to do a 3D cover, now is when you want to make that decision. Okay? There's a lot of things that you can make a 3D cover with. And one is, these are die cuts that I cut out using my die machine and a die that I had. So I thought the butterfly would be really pretty to go with the papers that I'm putting on the inside. And so I thought I'd go ahead and put that down. And then the other option that you have is stencils. You can use stencils with an embossing paste. And so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of stencil work on this as well as this butterfly, and then we're going to cover it from there. So but because this is let's see, I'm at 41 minutes right now, so I'm going to let that be it on this one, and I'm going to come back and do a second video on the 3D how to get the 3D on the cover, and then we'll let that dry. While that's drying, then we can do some stuff to our papers and stuff like that, okay? So if you have any questions about making your and covering your own cover, let me know for that, okay? So if you don't want to do anything 3D to your cover, then if you want it to be a brown paper sack, or if you want it to be maybe you don't want it smooth, maybe you want it crinkled, all you would do is crinkle up the paper first and then kind of smooth it out a little bit. You don't want it real crinkly, but you want to crinkle it up first, right? Smooth it out a little bit and then glue it down. And just let those wrinkles naturally be in the cover. Okay, so, and then you can put inks, you can put paints, you can do everything, anything else you want to do to the cover. Now, all that needs to be done before we do the sewing of the signatures on the inside. So especially if you're going to go through especially if you're going to attach it to your spine. If you're going to put holes in your spine and attach it through your spine, then you're going to have to decorate your cover first. Put whatever you need to on the cover first, and then we'll put the sew the signatures into your cover. Okay, so we should have our signatures done up. We should have the number that we want in our book and have them folded and whatnot put together. We should have a cover either here, a gutted book, and the book gutted and this prepared, ready to do whatever we're going to do to our cover, or our book base can be built then. Get to that point, I'll go ahead and do another short video on getting the 3D stuff on the cover if you want to do that. If not, then we'll just cover this one. Okay, so however you want to cover it. So okay, so another video will be coming shortly.